This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
My friends, this is it, the home stretch. We've been talking about this for a long time. I mean, think about it. When Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister was experiencing polling woes, you remember we started talking about how there would be an election, obviously, that would sort a lot of things out and which way would it go. And you remember Pierre Poilievre, he wins the Conservative leadership and doubles the membership and then starts polling to a super majority. And then Trudeau decides through the winter months, through his holiday break, whether or not he'll stick around. His walk in the snow, literally and metaphorically, results in his resignation, a leadership race. Mark Carney, the bounce back in the polls. And here we are, just hours away. By the time that many of you listen to this, heck, maybe some of you might be checking out this podcast on your way to vote on Monday, April 28th. For some of you who are watching this live, you're realizing you're heading into the last weekend where you're going to see candidates out everywhere in your riding. You're going to see the leaders traveling across the country, making campaign stop after campaign stop, doing everything they can to convince the undecideds, those that haven't already maybe cast their ballots in that record-setting advanced voting, that advanced polling, almost 26% in Alberta, 25% across the country. Of voters have already showed up. What does that say? This is what this has all built toward. And if we're being honest, still, nobody has a hot freaking clue who's going to win this thing. Shannon, Phillips, and Ken Boessenkool are going to join us in just a second. They've been hanging out with us every single Friday. Two of the partners at Meredith, Boessenkool, and Phillips, helping us sort out not just the highlights of that week, but the trends that we're seeing and ultimately where this is all headed from a couple of different lenses. It's been our bipartisan presentation, so to speak, and that will continue today. This will be our final Friday episode before the big day, before Election Day. On the back half of this episode, and if you're checking out the podcast later and you want to get right to it, you can jump ahead to our fertility roundtable. I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be real talk for sure. It's Canadian Fertility Awareness Week. For some of you, this may not be on your radar. For some of you, you're years away from even thinking about having kids. For others, your kids already have kids. But for some of you, the minute that you hear about fertility or infertility, I bet it strikes a nerve. I bet for some of you, it might even be a painful word to hear, a painful subject to talk about. We're going to welcome to our Real Talk studio a couple professionals in the space and a couple that made it their mission to do absolutely everything that they could do to welcome a baby to the world. I'm looking forward to that. Oh, and by the way, a whole bunch of you are all kinds of fired up with the Flamethrower set to drop. It's almost purely an election issue, as you would expect from this audience of the Flamethrower that we'll wrap with today, presented by our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Let's get the ball rolling with a reminder that Alberta's top online real estate school is responsible for the presenting sponsorship of this episode, and we're so grateful for our friends at Relo. You can find them online at relo.ca, where better real estate training starts. I know for a lot of you that are considering your next move, maybe it's a job hunt that has not been as fruitful as you had hoped to this point, or maybe you're stuck in, quite frankly, a dead-end job that you can't stand, working for a team that doesn't appreciate you, limited earning potential. Who wants that? Relo's going to set you up, whether it's commercial or residential real estate you're looking to practice. Say hello to being your own boss. You can check out your pre-licensing course options on their website. Take a look at the bundles in particular. That's where you're going to save the most money. If you're looking at the Alberta commercial or the Alberta residential real estate bundle, the promo code Ryan100, all one word, is going to save you $100 on each of those as you get your real estate career started today with the team at Relo. All right, let's jump right to it. Shannon Phillips, a former Alberta cabinet minister out of Lethbridge under Premier Rachel Notley. Ken Boessenkool, a former senior political advisor to many conservative leaders across the country, including BC Premier Christy Clark and Stephen Harper. Both of them partners at Meredith, Boessenkool, and Phillips, have been hanging out with us through the campaign, helping us make sense of everything, and I think establishing themselves as one of the most dynamic duos of punditry practitioners across the country. These roundtables have been wildly successful, you two, and we've sure been grateful for your contribution to them. Shannon, we are days away from the big vote. What is one story, either that developed this week or that may be developing as we speak, that you're keeping a very close eye on that could be a difference maker?
Well, what the hell are both Carney and Poilievre doing in Saskatoon?
Huh.
That's a pretty big story when campaigns at this point in the election cycle, you can really tell where they're on offense and defense. And for both of them to have stopped in Saskatoon, it is not clear to me that the Liberals have won a seat at all in Saskatoon, since the early 20th century. And I'd have to go back and look. And the fact that Poilievre felt the need to go and have a rally there after Carney had been there shows me that there's something going on in Saskatoon West, and things are getting a little wavy, and that's a little oddball.
Okay, so Ken, well, first of all, Ken, why don't we go to you? We'll get your story, and then we'll circle back on what Shannon's given us. The one thing you're keeping an eye on.
Well, the story is that there's no story. I love the way you open the show by remembering what happened to Trudeau. And it's a good reminder that people don't win elections, people lose elections. And, Justin Trudeau was going to lose an election. And then now we're seeing Pierre Poilievre is losing the election. And frankly, all the movement that happened between January 15th and March 15th, because during that period, we got a new U.S. president. He started talking about something else, and Canadians said to themselves, I want some different guy in charge than this Poilievre guy, and who else is on offer? And some guy named Carney stepped forward, and I don't think there's been much change through the course of this election. The polls have been remarkably stable, and I don't think Poilievre was ever really in it.
You don't think Poilievre was ever really in it? Seriously?
Not since the writ drop. No, this was baked before it started. By March 15th, it was over.
Wow. But I'm surprised to hear you say that. And you know more about politics than I do, but I'm looking at these two leaders, these two parties that are polling within a few points of each other, and it feels to me like...
No, they're not.
Okay, dig in, you two. You're smarter than me.
So, look, there's two things here. The national numbers, you need to have the Conservatives at least tied with the Liberals, if not leading them, in order for them to even achieve a minority, let alone a majority. That's where they need to be, given that their vote is so concentrated out here in the West and a few other places. And so their vote is inefficient compared to the Liberal vote. That's number one. Number two, when you look at those leader numbers since the time marker that Ken laid down haven't really changed. And in fact, they've gotten worse for Poilievre and better for Carney. And it's very rare that you see somebody's leader numbers get better over the course of the campaign. Usually, taking all the incoming fire means that they can move those negatives up. Your opponent can. It hasn't happened for Carney. And in fact, as people have gotten more looks at Pierre Poilievre, even absent a really sustained and I would say very good attack on Poilievre from the Liberals, they haven't really done much of anything. I don't really feel like they've lifted a huge number of fingers in this regard. But even still, people have gotten a look at Poilievre, and his negatives have gone up and his positives have gone down, particularly among women. And that's been the story since before this election started, and the election has I think solidified those dynamics.
Ken, go ahead, Ken.
Just really quickly, I think the other huge dynamic is when Stephen Harper won his majority, and I was in the room, he got 39, just under 40% of the vote, but the NDP got 30% and the Liberals got 20%, okay? Now, that means that the vote was split on the left. Today, the NDP are at 9%. That's like disappearing territory. They could come out of this election with 6 to almost, they won't even be an official party in Ottawa. The right or the left has united, and they've united behind Carney. In order to win, the Conservatives cannot win this election with 39.6% of the vote. They need to beat the Liberals. I think they need to beat the Liberals by at least 6 or 7 points to have any chance of forming the government. They're currently behind by 4. They need to be ahead by 6. So they need 10 points to win this election, because it's a 2-party race. This isn't a 3-party race. It's a 2-party race. And that hasn't happened before. And that's why everyone's saying, it's tightening. Stephen Harper won with 40%. Poilievre can win with 40%. No, he cannot, because it's a 2-party race, not a 3-party race.
Yeah, it's interesting. You say that's never happened before, and we look back to past elections, and there have always been these storylines. Like Nothing's ever guaranteed, but you always sort of felt like Elizabeth May was going to win her seat and the Greens were going to have a voice. And then you always felt like maybe one PPC candidate might find their way in. Maybe there'd be an independent. There'd be a sprinkling of diversity from political backgrounds. And then the three big parties, or the four, pardon me, the Bloc included as well, would each have like 15 to 20 plus, and one of them would have like 180 or whatever the case may be. It legitimately is. And I mean, I guess we won't know for sure until the 28th in the morning of the 29th, but it legitimately is a two-party race if you believe the dynamics in the ridings and if you believe the polling. Where did the two of you think, are we oversimplifying and analyzing how we got to that point, to the two-party race? As the NDP conducts its autopsy after this election, where will they find the root of that cancer?
The NDP autopsy has to start with Pierre Poilievre. Because he scared the living bejesus out of all those NDP voters, and they went and flew over and parked their votes with the Liberals, and they did that before the campaign started. I mean, this big shift was there for all to see by early to mid-March, before the writ was even issued. So the autopsy for the NDP is, how do we get a Conservative leader that doesn't scare our voters over to the Liberals?
Shannon, do you agree?
Oh, I 100% agree. There was one moment that is crystallized in my mind, and that was at a rally somewhere in Ontario, where Mark Carney rally, and there was a lady in the audience who was probably, I don't know, my age, right? 40s, 50s, who yells out as Carney is speaking, "Lead us, Big Daddy." And the fact of the matter is that was emblematic of what is going on out there on the landscape. People are looking for that leadership. Women in particular are looking for someone who can stand up to Trump, because they look at Trump and they recoil in horror, women voters in particular, and women voters over 40 in particular. Right? And think about what would cause a woman voter over 40 to yell that phrase. Would she yell it at Pierre Poilievre? Absolutely not. Ew. Would she yell it at Jagmeet Singh? No, because he does not have the right issue set right now. Right? People do vote NDP, progressive voters do, in particular women do, when the issue set is more domestic. And when it is more focused on things like public services. This election just wasn't. The issue set just was not built for them. And so that, in many ways, left Carney. And what did he have? He had those leadership attributes that people were looking for in this moment. Now, that does mean that there are dragons ahead for the Liberal Party of Canada, because they have raided that progressive vote. Mr. Carney is not particularly progressive in his orientation, and they are setting themselves up to potentially overread their mandate. We can maybe get into that later. But he is making the broadest possible pitch to see if he can pick off some of the Conservative voters while maintaining the progressives that have collapsed into him. They have done a good job of that, even though, people like me have sort of, criticized some of the advertising that the Liberals have done. Maybe they haven't ridden that Trump horse as hard as they could have into the final ballot. I think Trump helped them by yelling about 51st State and auto parts again the other day. But to my mind, it was a question of leadership in this moment. And it was Mark Carney that was uniquely positioned, despite all of the drags on the Liberal Party of Canada brand, and they are many and legion at this point.
We're talking to Shannon Phillips and Ken Boessenkool, partners at Meredith Boessenkool and Phillips. Wondering where's Tyler Meredith? Well, he's working on the Liberal campaign. He's not doing media. So we got these two as the pillars of our Round Talk every Friday. In the Real Talk live chat, powered by Park Power, Greg says, these people, that's you two, by the way, these people will not be hungry all of next week because they'll be busy eating their words. Blah Sheep says that's right. These guys are going to be eating their hats on Monday. You've got a couple of them, I think, still very optimistic that the Conservatives can pull this one out. This is all prognostication, obviously, but Ken, what could the Conservatives do? What do the Conservatives have to do? I mean, aside from water into wine, to win this thing on Monday. They have 72 hours to do it. How can they do it?
Well, respectfully, this is not prognostication. This is math.
Okay.
There's not.
No offense, man.
Yeah, I would rather Pierre Poilievre be prime minister. I'm a conservative, but he just hasn't done what he needed to do to win this election, and he did a whole bunch of things to cause him to lose the election. What needs to happen for him to win? He needs to get women to vote for him, and his gap among women, young women, is large. Among older women, it's catastrophic. He's losing older men, which is why he produced that Viagra ad with the two golfers. Like Stephen Harper, the idea that the Conservatives are losing among men over 55 is just mind-boggling, and it's because he just didn't grasp what the issues at stake were. And so I'm sorry for your listener who thinks I'm making stuff up, but if every poll in the country hasn't moved or has moved 1 point in the last 2 weeks, and it shows a big Liberal lead, and the only reason that it's tightening is because Conservative votes are going up in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, and they're like 15 points gap in Ontario. Like, there's just no path. You can't get there with those numbers.
Shannon, I want to circle back with your opening observation about where the leaders are. Have you been in presence across the country? I'm watching some of the other coverage, including Pierre Poilievre's tensions, I think, that have surfaced and been, Canadians have been made aware of this, tensions with Nova Scotia's premier simmering as he's made his sole stop in the province, and obviously a story behind that. But what can we learn, or what can the average Canadian keep an eye on or take from the campaign stops that we'll see over the next couple of days?
Well, they're going to be playing offense and defense, right? Certainly hanging around in Central Nova means that they know that they've got a problem there. Historically, that was Peter MacKay's seat, or at least most of it, and a pretty safe territory for the Conservatives, but is not anymore. The numbers in Atlantic Canada I have described them previously as fairly North Korean, and the Liberals are in very, very good shape there. To the previous comment about you can't trust the polls or whatever, this is a big country, and you've got to look at it with the regional breakdowns, right? Yes. And where that vote is concentrated. So all of your neighbors in Central Alberta might be Conservatives, but this is a big place, and there are thousands and thousands and thousands of kilometers between us here out west and what voters are thinking about in Atlantic Canada and Newfoundland up north, and even in British Columbia. There are more than two solitudes in this country. There are many, many solitudes, and that's how we have to think about it. And that's why the math is what it is, right? And that's just the reality. The world is round. But I also think, there's another story to be told here with respect to what's going on with the Conservative campaign, that everywhere they go, they don't generate, hey, I'm here in Nova Scotia to talk about affordability and the fact that your home heating bills are through the roof, your taxes are through the roof, there's no new housing, it's been really hard, which would be central Conservative message. And do you really want 4 more years of Liberals? If I was a Conservative, those are the headlines I'd want. Instead, you've got these process stories about what's happening behind the scenes and whether people like each other or not between the Poilievre campaign and the Premier's office in Nova Scotia. It's insane. They're setting some sort of world record for process stories about the campaign during the campaign. And which shows you the extent to which people are already post-morteming. They're already pointing fingers, and that's just not a good day for the Conservatives when that's what you generate for your stories.
Yeah, these alleged tensions of which I know nothing about, I know what I read in the national news coverage between Nova Scotia's Premier Tim Houston and Pierre Poilievre. Apparently, there's been a rift for several months. Houston, when asked why he's not been publicly supportive of the federal Conservatives, says he's not a member of any federal party. Pierre Poilievre made one campaign stop in Nova Scotia, did not meet with the premier there, the Conservative premier there. Are we looking to read too much into this? Is there a bit of a story here? What's going on?
I could talk about this for a long time, but let me take it in a slightly different direction, which I think explains and answers your question. Shannon just said if you took 5 people in Red Deer, all their neighbors are voting the same. If you took 5 Conservatives from Red Deer and you introduced them to 5 Conservatives from Nova Scotia, they wouldn't think they're in the same party. Huh. If you took 5 Conservatives from Red Deer and introduced them to 5 Conservatives from Central Ontario, they would not think they're in the same party. If you took 5 Conservatives from Red Deer and you introduced them to 5 Conservatives from Quebec, they would not think they were in the same political party. The point I'm making is that Liberals across the country are generally aligned on a broad set of issues, but Conservatives in Alberta are not the same as Conservatives in Quebec and are not the same as Conservatives in Atlantic Canada. This is why it's so hard for Conservatives to win. Pierre Poilievre has run an Alberta Conservative election, and that has not appealed to Conservatives in Ontario. He's winning by massive amounts in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and he's losing by massive amounts in Ontario, right after another Conservative, Doug Ford, won a massive landslide in Ontario and got 43 or 44% of the vote. So, like, it's the problem Shannon identified about the country's big. This problem is magnified for Conservatives because Conservative voters are very different in different parts of the country. And that's underlying these tensions. There's a bunch of personality, can I use the word bullshit, going on here. The federal campaign, it got too big for its britches and started telling people who they would talk to, who they wouldn't talk to, got petty with Doug Ford, got petty with Tim Houston. Like, that's just, again, they set themselves up for a fall, and now they're experiencing a fall.
Gilles, in our live chat powered by Park Power, get exclusive discounts on internet, electricity, and natural gas at parkpower.ca/realtalk. Gilles says what Ken is talking about is the challenges of so-called big tent parties. He says the United Conservatives lost all the progressives as well in Alberta. Jay says this is the danger of creating a political brand around a single person. Greg says Conservatives allow opinions, apparently. And Ben says, I totally agree. Conservatives from Alberta, Ontario, Quebec, and the East Coast are quite different breeds of animal. That on our Real Talk live chat. What do you two make of this story? The Conservative campaign is obviously denying it. Obviously, they're saying that it's based on faulty logic. Reporting suggesting that Pierre Poilievre is poised to lose his own riding, his Ottawa area riding, as Liberals are poised to sweep the region. Ken, could it happen?
I don't think so. But what we are seeing is that the polling in Eastern Ontario keeps going higher and higher for the Liberals. And so if you take a really loose model and you apply that across the region, it looks like the Liberals are going to do very well. So I just think it was probably just a faulty, not faulty is not the right word, but when you get down to the riding level and you're using provincial numbers, it's pretty hard to make individual riding predictions. And so I think someone made one of those predictions. But like, this seat has gone the other way in the past 25 years. So it's not inconceivable. I just don't think it's happening now. It was a bit of, dirty, not even dirty. These are the kind of things you do in campaigns. You put the fear of God in the opposite campaign, and Pierre Poilievre, we're talking about it here. So we're not talking about affordability. We're not talking about a 4-year mandate. We're talking about whether Pierre Poilievre is going to win a seat. So, this is what you do in campaigns. You try and throw your opposite party off their stride. And, someone did a pretty good job of throwing them off their stride. But I don't think he's going to lose a seat. If he does, good Lord, it'd be even more catastrophic than I think it's going to be.
Yeah, I would take the odds on it. In other words, I think that Poilievre's going to win his riding. I don't know if it's Robert Fife, who reported it for the Globe, said not identifying his conservative sources, two or whom from the Ontario Progressive Conservative Party, not authorized to discuss the campaign or internal polling.
I had access yesterday to it's not even a poll, but it's this new methodology where they take social media chatter and they identify it by postal code, and they do riding breakouts like that. And that one had Poilievre leading in his riding by 52%. So I think that's probably closer to the truth.
Okay, I want to put this, Shannon, we're not ignoring you, but I want to put this in front of the Conservative on the panel. LT says, how come these two are so negative on Conservatives? They only have positives to offer about Mark Carney and negatives about Pierre Poilievre. They're speaking as though Carney has already won. LT wonders, Ken, why so negative? If you're a Conservative, why aren't you towing the party line? Why aren't you banging the drum? Why aren't you doing what everybody does on social media?
Look, Ryan, you asked me onto this show to tell people what I think, not tell people what the party thinks. I can read numbers. When I look at, Shannon said it earlier, like Pierre Poilievre's negatives are through the roof, and they've gotten worse through the course of his campaign. So it's not just me that's saying it. This is what Canadian impressions are. Canadian had an impression of Mark Carney at the beginning of the campaign, and now they have a better impression of him. So I'm just telling you what I'm reading in the campaign, and I'm not here to spout talking points for a Conservative Party. I'm here to do the same thing we do for our clients, to tell them what's going on, to help people understand what's really going on. and not produce, to use an old term, fake news because my party says this is what's going on.
We welcomed the NDP leader Jagmeet Singh to our studio earlier this week. Just at an individual level, heck of a guy. Comes in here talking about his favorite pizza place that he loves to visit in Edmonton every time he's here. That's High Dough, by the way. He's a big fan of High Dough. Snapped a photo with Johnny. Very likable guy. Very nice guy. And obviously not like sticking the fork into his party right now. No leader would do that ahead of the election. But you do feel like it's a guy, as we said earlier, whose political career is in palliative care. Some pretty interesting comments, Shannon and the Toronto Star and other outlets reporting Jagmeet's basically, he says, listen, Canada, he's standing by this, says to stop Pierre Poilievre, I put Canada before the NDP. Shannon, I've been looking forward to asking you about this. Take us into your thoughts.
I actually think this is really honorable. This is someone rising above the seat total to talk about their vision for Canada. And if there is one thing that defines the federal NDP's presence, and before the federal NDP, the CCF, going back to the early 20th century, it is that. To define a different vision of who we are and what we stand for as a country, and the things that we can do together that we cannot do as individuals. He took that brief seriously. Now, was it strategic? Was it the right tactics along the way? No. No, it wasn't. But equally, too, did he deliver things that history will look kindly on? Yes. Also, too, did he make decisions last fall to protect our progressive values from a Poilievre majority, which would have been overwhelming, which would have been a 200-seat majority, where we were already talking internally about what is the future of the Canada Health Act if this man is put in the Prime Minister's office? Yes, we were. Those of us in progressive policy circles. I have been worried about this for the year and a half, 2 years that Poilievre was, leading in the polls. What does this mean for the things that make us Canadian? We dodged more than a bullet there when we look at the threat from the United States. It has meant, paradoxically, that two things. Number one, that it kept Jagmeet Singh in the leader's chair far after the 2021 election, which arguably was not strategic for the party to do, right? After leading the party through two elections in which we lost seats both times in 2019 and in 2021, when it was very, very clear that there were no more paths to growth in his leadership. The fact is that the party should, and the caucus should have had those real conversations, those come to Jesus moments, and found a new leader and a new path. That's number one. But they didn't do that, and so they have played the cards as well as they could, and it is going to lead to an existential crisis for the party. To Ken's point, it is very likely not to lead to official party status after the election. If it does, then that is wonderful, and it is a much better path for the party. It does not mean that Mr. Singh should enjoy the leadership going forward. Having said that, he did make the right decisions for Canada, not for the party.
Ken, I want to give you a chance to respond to it.
Look, that's all correct. I remember Jack Layton being much more of a strategic leader. Jack Layton would attack the Liberals instead of attacking Conservatives because he knew that that's the people he had to beat to win an election. And he was the official opposition in 2011. And so, there's two kinds of New Democrats in the country, as far as I can tell. There are the kind that want to form government, and they exist in Alberta and Manitoba and Saskatchewan and BC. And there are the kind that want to play, look how principled we are. And those tend to be federal and in Ontario. And, I guess that's a choice that they want to make. But in my view, the purpose of a political party is to win elections. The purpose of a political party is not to say, look how principled we are, which is another reason I've been so critical of Poilievre, I guess. They've just not set themselves up to win this election. And that's what the purpose of a political party is.
Okay. In closing, I have 30 seconds left with both of you. So this is just a fun, quick hit. The Brantford Boomer, significant relating to the outcome of this election, or the dumbest story that any of us have spent any time talking about this election? Where do you land?
Dumbest.
Dumbest?
This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. This is Facebook nonsense, and amplified by the terminally online far right. Like, who cares? Who cares? There are much more interesting things to talk about. If you want to talk about something interesting, go and delve into the Liberal Party of Canada platform, and you can find plenty to criticize about the Liberals there, or plenty to hold up as the future of this country. But like, go read something. Get off your phone. This is stupid.
Okay. Tell us how you really feel. We love hanging out with you too. We sure appreciate it. Have an incredible weekend. If you're looking to make better policy and a bigger impact, check out mbpolicy.com. That's where you can find the work of Shannon, Phillips, Ken Boessenkool, Tyler Meredith. Again, that's mbpolicy.com. We'll link to it in the show notes. Talk to you again soon, friends.
Cheers, Ryan.
Yeah, you bet. Real Talkers, let us know what you think to talk at ryanjesperson.com. Obviously, a lot of comments in the chat. Dwayne wanted me to ask our panelists there. He says, what do they think is going to happen to Pierre Poilievre after the election? Great question. I'd be curious to know. Here's what I think, Dwayne. Number one, we're out of time with those two. Number two, let's wait till the election's done, right? Like, part of me is still thinking, like, only because I, like, maybe like you, whether you, sort of make predictions with your friends on things like elections, or whether you bet your hard-earned dollars on the outcome of sports games or things like that. Did anybody have the Oilers down 0-2 against the Kings? Anybody have money on the Kings right now? Anybody losing their shirt with the Oilers? Let's wait and see what happens on Monday. I mean, everybody's talking like the election's done, but it's not. But Ken sure sounds like he's convinced that it is, but it's actually not. So let's see. And we'll see how everybody is proven right or proven wrong. But it will be a fascinating story to talk about, and we will have to wait and see what either leader does when they lose. If Mark Carney loses, does he stick around as leader of the opposition? Not a chance. If Pierre Poilievre loses, does he stick around as leader of the official opposition? Well, I mean, do the Liberals have a minority? Are they going to be propped up? Are they going to have to call another election in 18 months? Can Poilievre see a situation where maybe he sticks around in opposition for 18 months and takes the Conservatives into another election? Or do the Conservatives eat their own? Tell Poilievre to GTFO, hit the road? Does he sit in obscurity as just an MP in the back, as has been done before? Andrew Scheer's doing it, right? He hasn't had any other jobs. I mean, I don't know. Let's wait and see. Like, does Jagmeet Singh lose his own riding? Does the NDP get blown out so badly that it triggers a leadership race? Not as the dust is settling, but down the line. I think it was Shannon a couple of weeks ago who told us that she expects that that's a conversation that'll be had maybe 6 months down the line. But again, like, this is why we say, in sports fans, this is why they play the games. The election hasn't happened yet, so we'll wait and see. But Dwayne, I take your question, I take your point, and I appreciate all of you that are chiming in here on the live chat. Those of you that will be leaving comments on this YouTube episode after the fact, or of course sending us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. We're talking fertility on the other half of this break. I'm really looking forward to this. It's Canadian Fertility Awareness Week. You know, there is an election tie into all of this. I bet our panelists don't want to get political, but did you see Linda Hoang's in the green room right now just rolling her eyes at me because she knows I'm going to ask her. Mark Carney says that a Liberal federal government will make up to $20,000 available for IVF treatments for families that are looking to get pregnant. That's a huge deal for a lot of people whose only barrier, well, let me be careful in how I put that. There are several barriers. That's the whole point. But one of the biggest barriers to really, really doing everything they can to welcome a bundle of joy to the world is the cost barrier. But that's not the only barrier. We're about to get into this with some real talk coming up in just a second. First, if you work in the energy industry, solar, geothermal, oil and gas, whatever it is, or your energy industry adjacent, I want to invite you to join us May 14th and 15th at the Nisku Energy Show put on by the Leduc, Nisku, and Wetaskiwin Chamber. This is going to be an awesome gathering celebrating local innovation and collaboration, highlighting the expertise and advancements shaping Alberta's future. Explore the possibilities and excellence in the heart of Alberta, hosted at the beautiful Silent Ice Sports and Entertainment Center in Nisku. You can get your tickets today. Again, that's the Nisku Energy Show, May 14th and 15th at yourchamber.ca. Hey, calling all golfers, excited to let you know that the Ranch Golf and Country Club, not only open right now, they've been open for a while. I had a chance to get out there and play around. How'd you shoot, Ryan? I didn't keep score, friends. If you know me, you know that that's not true. I just don't want to talk about it. First round of the year, just working out the kinks, everybody. But that course is looking absolutely fantastic. You know, the best value public golf course in Edmonton, that title has been bestowed on the ranch year after year after year. You know, nobody does more tournaments than them either. More than 120 a year. What does that mean for you? It means that if you're putting on a tournament as a fundraiser, a celebration, or otherwise, you can lean on their team to help you make sure you get your merch sorted out, make sure that your menu is on point. They're going to cover you from start to finish. It all starts with a visit to their website, theranchgolf.com. I know that there's somebody watching or listening right now that is just waiting for the universe to tap them on the shoulder with an employment opportunity. This is your sign at kuby.ca. That's KUBY.ca. Check out Carbon by Kuby, Solar by Kuby, Utilities by Kuby. They're ready to rock and they're hiring right now. Western Canada's fastest growing solar installer, looking to add team members in Kamloops, Kelowna, Lethbridge, Calgary, Edmonton. They've got design jobs, sales jobs, engineering jobs, you name it. Even an opportunity for an apprentice open right now. Again, that's kuby.ca. Click on solar, then careers. And our friends at California Closets want to remind you they are proudly Canadian owned and operated. You know, every single custom closet or storage solution that's installed in the province of Alberta is manufactured right here in Alberta. They're sourcing all of their materials from within Canada right now. And one of the best parts about a California Closets installation, it's guaranteed for life. They can work with any vision. They can work with any budget. It all starts with a free consultation. You can request that today. Connect with their team at californiaclosets.ca. Been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time. And not just because Linda Hoang is one of the most entertaining panelists that I've ever had the opportunity to dance with over the years, but I've never had a chance, Linda, to hang out with you and your hubby, Mike, at the same time. And I'm really grateful that the two of you have made yourselves available today to talk about your personal fertility journey. This, for a lot of people, is a very difficult thing to talk about, but you have kind of like lived your life out in the open on your Instagram account with tens of thousands of followers, taking everybody into your family's journey.
Yeah, I think this is not going to be as fun a conversation as we normally have.
Yeah, we're usually laughing because you put on like the Edmonton Cat Show, and we're always laughing about cats, making stupid dad jokes about cats. But this is the first time you and I have ever really talked about this. There's been a lot of private messages because our families have walked some similar miles. But I'm really happy to have you here. You reached out to the show, putting yourself out there, saying that Mike and I are willing to talk about this. And I suspect that I don't need to tell you that there's going to be a bunch of people that are listening and watching this show that are right there with you.
Yeah, I think for us, it's been quite a eye-opening experience when we first started talking about our fertility struggles, which started over a decade ago. Just how many people could relate with this, and we realized, you know, it's so common, but no one talks about it. Everyone struggles with infertility silently. So in the last, because it took us nearly a decade to conceive, in that last decade, thankfully more people have been open about their story and what they're going through, and there's still so many who don't talk about it. And I do find that when we do open up, you feel less alone. But even if you can't relate, because there's certainly lots of people who cannot relate, I think it helps then just create a better society where we're not as judgmental, or we're not making as many assumptions, or we're not maybe talking out of our ass about things that we don't know, you know, that
maybe
people are dealing with.
Maybe even just being careful about comments, being careful about things you ask people about. When are you guys going to have kids?
Exactly.
And it's just a knife that goes into somebody that's been trying to have kids for like 10 years. Do you remember, take us back, Mike, to when the two of you had the gleam in the eye, and you're looking at each other and you're like, babe, let's start a family. Did you think it was going to be just as simple as we're going off birth control and 9 months later we're going to be in the delivery room?
Yeah, I definitely thought it was that simple. Like we got married in 2013, and we're like, okay, we waited a year because that's the right thing to do. Okay, off birth control, time to get busy. Probably might take a month or two.
Yeah, hopefully you get some practice. Hopefully it doesn't happen right away.
Yeah, and then 9-10 years later we're still just like, no kid.
What was that journey like for you mentally?
It wasn't fun. Like it was fun in the beginning, I guess. But, but yeah, after a while, it's just there's a lot of tears, a lot of like just wondering why. What did we do that caused this? Like is there a reason? Like, why won't anyone tell us the reason? You know?
Yeah.
For us, there wasn't a reason. So we were diagnosed, and I'm putting up, air quotes, diagnosed with unexplained infertility, which really meant that, we checked off all the boxes for being able to conceive. And
really?
They just didn't know. And that's a reason. That's like a legitimate medical diagnosis. It's just unexplained.
Wow. I endeavor to learn something every single day on this show. There's one thing that I've just learned right now. Well, why don't we introduce the rest of our panelists? This is awesome. We got 4 voices on today's Real Talk Roundtable. Dr. Ariana Daniel joining us in studio, a physician, a reproductive endocrinologist, and an infertility specialist, the owner of the Alberta Reproductive Center. And also remotely, we'll welcome in Michelle Chidley joining us. Michelle's the chair of Fertility Alberta Advocacy and Outreach Association. Michelle, good morning to you. It's nice to see your face.
Good morning.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Dr. Daniel, the unexplained infertility, how common is that? Is it quite uncommon?
So if we looked overall, if we tried to break it down simply, about 30% has to do with the eggs, the female factor, 30% male factor, 30% both, and 10% we just don't know. We've done all the testing. We've exhausted what we have in medicine to try and figure it out. And in 2025, we still don't understand why that couple is not conceiving.
Wow. And so this, what does that do when it comes to like a couple like Linda and Mike? And I want you to tell the story in your own words about how this story has like the next chapter, so to speak. But if you don't have an answer for a couple, where does that leave? And I guess I'm saying the couple. If you don't have the answer for the person or people who want to become parents, where do you go from there?
Right. Well, I think sometimes it's very obvious. There's issues with the sperm, there's issues with the eggs, there's issues with the tube, there's issues with the uterus. In the situation where we don't know, in a great way, it leaves us with lots of options. In a very frustrating way for patients, it leaves them with no answers. And so we offer them possibilities, inseminations, medications, IVF, surgery.
Okay. Michelle, you're the chair of Fertility Alberta Advocacy and Outreach Association. I know that, like I said in the opening to Linda and Mike, to show up and into microphones, talk about a journey for you is for a lot of people probably the worst nightmare. This is something that for a lot of folks can really cause heartache. And for a lot of folks, it's very difficult to talk about why is it so important to have a Canadian Fertility Awareness Week? Why is it so important to have advocacy in the title, outreach in the title of what you're doing?
Well, I think first of all, infertility has been shrouded in shame and guilt and isolation. And for all of those reasons, we need advocates and people like Linda and Mike speaking out, telling their stories to help destigmatize and normalize the many paths to parenthood. We started Fertility Alberta just a couple of years ago, so we're still fairly new, but 6 passionate current and former patients got together to start Fertility Alberta, to be the voice of fertility patients with the Alberta government, to make sure that we were advocating on behalf of patients across this province to make access to fertility care equitable for all Albertans.
I always like to let the podcast audience know what's happening that they're not seeing on camera. The two of you are sitting here holding each other's hands. It's just like kind of I don't know. It's kind of a cool thing to see. It's a bit of a rarity on our roundtables. It's usually people that can't stand each other with different political views. But you're here supporting each other. This is when you hear those words, shame and guilt and isolation. Every person's journey is going to be different. Every person's going to feel differently. But for you, we're saying approximately 10 years. That 10-year stretch for you, a lot of what you did was public commentary, helping people understand, taking people along on your journey. You guys went on these tropical getaways, I guess we'll say these international trips to do everything you could to try to make this dream happen. But the journey internally for you, emotionally and otherwise, can you tell us about it?
Yeah, I actually am still surprised that we both get that choked up when we talk about this, even though we have been talking about it for almost a decade.
Yeah.
Because I think that the recurring heartache that we had and the heartbreak that was literally every month for quite some time, it doesn't really leave you. So, I mean, you kind of alluded to the next chapter. We do have a happy outcome from this. We do have a baby. He's our miracle baby now, but talking about it and remembering, you know, every month, I just shared this with actually the public. I just shared this online the other day. Every month waiting to see if we got my period, you know what I mean? And which is funny because so much of society is like, oh my God, if you don't get your period, you're pregnant. That's bad. And for us, it was like, is there gonna be blood?
Right.
You know, and literally like diverting my eyes, like taking that moment before checking. And then for us, we did see, oh, I got my period that month. Was really, really painful. But you know, you mentioned us holding hands. I think that has helped, or that we have been, I think, a source of hope for each other, and that's not, unfortunately, that's not the case for a lot of couples that struggle, because this is something that can, you know, tear couples apart as well.
Listen to this. So Tony's watching us in our live chat right now. She says, sadly, the infertility issue for me was a major factor to the end of my marriage. She says it's so awesome to see a couple going through this together. She says, I love it. Yeah. How did you learn or evolve as a partner, as a man, you know, as someone walking miles with your wife on this to be able to offer support as you could?
Yeah, obviously for me, it's not my body. We're trying to go through the changes, and I was just, but it was tough for me just emotionally, like being there each month, you know, just us both being disappointed. And I think, and people had talked to me before when I was working. They'd be like, oh, Mike, you know, if you can't have a kid, like what are you going to do? And I was just like, well, guess we'll just get more cats and dogs. And now we have tons of cats, tons of dogs, and a baby. How
did that work out for you?
But I remember I was the one for some of these fertility treatments getting injected with needles. And so it was quite, you know, it was kind of painful, stressful, and hard on my body. But it was quite stressful for him to be the one stabbing me with
you literally have to jab a needle into her stomach, and it's like, I'm not a trained nurse or doctor. Should I really be just jabbing a needle in you?
Yeah. I'm thinking of the scene from Pulp Fiction. Totally inappropriate. Totally inappropriate. Oh boy, the conversations you're going to have with this little boy over the years. This little boy is that already, I'm sure, feels so loved. I can't wait for him to be able to be old enough to understand.
He'll come on
stories.
The show. Yeah,
100%. The numbers are somewhat staggering. 1 in 6 Canadians struggling with fertility.
Yeah.
Is there an asterisk to that, or is that really this common? To help us understand the miles that people are walking.
Yeah,
Canadian stat, the kilometers people are walking.
The World Health Organization says it's 1 in 6 worldwide, and It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't mean we're different in Canada, that it doesn't affect us. And that means that 2 million Canadians are facing challenges getting pregnant. And nobody starts their family thinking it will take a year or 10 years, or we should leave that time in case it does. Everybody walks into it saying, you know what, I went to school, I got my job, I found my person, or I'm going to do this by myself, and then expect it to happen quickly because they've spent their whole life preventing it. And so I think it takes people by surprise. And often it takes a long time for people to actually seek help. And the longer people wait, we know the less effective our treatments are.
That is such a good point you make, Doctor. How does somebody know when it's the right time to seek help?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's so important. So if you're less than 35, trying for a year is okay. If you're over 35, 6 months, we'd like to see somebody. And then there's the asterisk to that. If you have PCOS or endometriosis, or have had genital surgery, or there's another factor, you're part of the LGBTQSA2+ community, a single mother, someone who's gone through cancer treatments, you should be seeing a fertility specialist sooner rather than later.
Michelle, Alberta's the only, I want to actually reference your sense of humor, because you originally pitched this to us. Do you remember what day it was?
Yeah,
it was April 1st. And I get this email from Linda that says, news release, not a joke. Alberta becomes the only province in Canada without public funding for fertility care as reliance on fertility treatment grows. Michelle, your group and Dr. Daniel's clinic have both been vocal in calling on the province to commit to funding here. What's the argument for this being publicly funded?
Well, fertility care is healthcare. We live in a country with universal healthcare, yet for 1 in 6 Canadians, you have to pay out of pocket to get the medical care you need to have your family. That is the primary argument for why governments should do this. I think it's the right thing to do to help people, especially right now in a time of affordability crisis. People can't afford these treatments. So, and I think the more expensive the treatments, the harder it is for people to pay for it. The average cost of one round of IVF is $20,000, and it takes 2 to 3 rounds often for people to be successful. So that starts to add up, and without any financial support, some people have support through their employers, and that's part of the advocacy we do as well. Is we educate and lobby governments, but we also advocate to employers to add fertility benefits.
How do employers tend to respond to that? Do you? Well, you first. You first, Michelle. Then we'll go around the table here.
Yeah. You know what? It's getting better. Right now, less than half of Canadian employers provide any form of fertility benefits, but it's 47%, I believe. And then of that 47%, less than 2% of those provide medications and treatments, or funding or benefits, for funding. Oh my goodness, sorry.
Oh, no.
For medications and treatments. It's mostly medication coverage. But it is getting better. As I said, you can be a Starbucks barista and get your IVF covered through Starbucks, Walmart, all the big banks. It's coming, but that started more in American companies, and Canadian companies are starting to follow.
Nothing to do with anything, but I share this story whenever I can. When I worked as a Starbucks barista for just 6 months, and I always want to give that company credit. You know, one of my best friends died suddenly from a brain aneurysm, 26 years old. Starbucks gave me benefits, like allowed me to go to the funeral, paid leave, and I was like, I'll never forget that. I just like a bereavement benefit kind of a thing. I thought it was interesting. Maybe I wonder, like, when you were talking to people at a local level, like your friends, people you knew, was anybody talking about that, like work benefits, insurance coverage, that kind of a thing? Was that on anybody's radar?
Oh gosh, no. Yeah. So this is what I think Fertility Alberta is doing is incredible, because we don't consider this. And again, unless it affects you, you don't consider it.
Totally.
Mike's previous work, he did have some benefits to cover some of our medication, but not all of it.
And it helped that we actually were talking about our struggle.
Yes.
My work was like, I can add this in our benefit plan, and we were like, it's no real change of a cost to them, and they're like, if I help you out, well.
Yeah, because we were open about it, they were willing to change a little bit of their plan to accommodate more medication for us, which is really nice. Yeah,
that is cool. Courtesy of Michelle and her team at Fertility Alberta, we have some numbers here. A 2023 survey of more than 600 Albertans talking about their fertility experience. 74% of people, so 3 out of 4, who did not proceed with needed fertility treatments identified cost as the reason. So 3 out of 4, it was cost. 60% of those who did undergo treatment spent between $10,000 and $50,000, and nearly half of those patients that proceeded with treatments required a loan to cover the cost. When I could see you through the glass in our green room when I brought up that Mark Carney and the Liberal Party of Canada pledging this week, they're calling it Pathways to Parenthood for Everybody, including providing up to $20,000 in federal funding for a single IVF cycle. I remember when I saw it, I was sitting right here in this seat. We were not doing the show live. I saw it and I went, ooh, because that's what I know for a lot of people. Donald Trump is not their ballot box question. That's that. What do you make of it?
I think it's great. I think any commitment to funding is great. We haven't seen it in Alberta, and that for me is shocking, because we've got Fertility Alberta, we've got really all of the clinics in the province basically begging for funding support, and it's been crickets. It's been silence, and there's been no reason offered. As she said, like, infertility is a disease, and fertility care is healthcare. So it really makes no sense that here locally we're not getting that support. So then to see it federally committed, I think all of us were pretty excited and kind of eagerly awaiting, those Monday results.
Yeah, I mean, this is a medical issue. Imagine any physician sitting in front of their patient and knowing that there's a treatment that can help to cure the disease. I hate to call it infertility disease, but the medical condition that your patient has.
Well, you're a doctor. Is it a disease?
Yes, it's a medical condition, absolutely. Yeah. People don't do something to themselves
that's not
cause
an
or
opinion.
infertility.
That's a fact.
It's a fact. It's a fact. It's in the textbooks. There's not another condition in healthcare where you say, oh, can you afford this? Or you can't have it. I mean, patients can always make a choice not to proceed with a treatment. But this is one where I have literally seen patients mortgage their homes. I've seen them take loans, and heartbreakingly, I've seen them sit in front of me and say, we just can't afford it. We're done. Like, 100%. This is the end.
Yeah. I've told our story, and I asked for permission at home to share it a little bit, but it's brief and I'll tell it quickly. But we were in the same boat. We tried for years for our second, Noah, who's now about to turn 3. And I remember, like, when we decided to go talk to a doctor and kind of do this thing, and I'll be honest, like, in the back of my, I didn't verbalize it at the beginning because I'm not an idiot, but I was like, this is going to be $50,000. Like, that's honestly what I was thinking. And thankfully our journey did not involve that. And ultimately we kind of just got lucky. You want to know the truth?
Yeah.
I stopped smoking weed and sitting in the hot tub.
That's great.
That's honestly the truth. Michelle's laughing from Calgary. That's honestly the truth. The doctor says to me after I did my test, that's kind of a weird thing too, isn't it, Mike? I don't know. Guys are wired, maybe not all of us the exact same, but I'm like, it's not me. Well, guess what?
It was you.
The narrator. It was him.
Mike, I will put on the record, Mike's sperm test came back excellent. Like, he was showing his paper to friends.
Doctor told me frame it on the fridge.
Put it on the. You got it up at work. Not just numbers, but motility. I learned what motility meant. But yeah, no, and seriously, and there are people that are just going, I don't have $10,000. I don't have $40,000. Chelsea the Ginge is watching us right now, and Chelsea says, this couple is couple goals. Chelsea says, I had a medical diagnosis which could have affected our ability to conceive. My hubby and I chatted, and like this couple, we wanted a family, but we wanted each other more. Canada Mike says more and more women are freezing their eggs in their 20s. They may not know if they want kids yet, but it gives them options, and having IVF more readily available later in life is key. Michelle, you're nodding to Canada Mike's comment. Is that in fact a trend, or are more and more people doing that?
Yeah, it apparently egg freezing went up. I don't know, it was like 80% or something during or post-COVID. So, and I don't know if Dr. Daniel has insight into why all of a sudden the explosion, but it could be because young women were in COVID and not coupled, and seeing those years kind of go by, and knowing that it might take some time.
What do you think?
I think this is in our consciousness now. I think as much as we love to hate the Kardashians and we love to hate social media, and there's stigma around infertility, the more we talk about it, the more people hear about it, and then it becomes part of our awareness. And I think women now are really saying, like, I want to be empowered to choose when I have my children. I want to make that choice. I see a long road ahead of me with my career, or I don't have a partner, or I'm going through cancer treatments. I want the opportunity when I decide to be able to use my biologic material to have my own biologic children, because we know that if you wait too long, or there's a factor like chemotherapy or radiation, at that point you may not be able to have your own children. We're then looking at donor egg or adoption or fostering or mentoring or another way to complete your family, which does exist. But for many people, they want to take control over their own fertility. And so we're seeing more and more women thinking about it, finding out information about it, and ultimately going ahead and freezing their eggs so they have that option in the future if they can't conceive.
I have an addition to this. So my friend was in a small town, Alberta, and she's mid-30s, going closer to 40s, not in a relationship, but wanted to take control of her situation, knew she wanted to have kids in the future, wanted to pursue freezing her eggs. And she goes to her local doctor to ask for a referral to a fertility specialist to get this process started. And the doctor said, you don't even have a partner. Why are you concerned about this? I'm not referring you unless you've been in a relationship for a year.
What?
Just the lack of understanding. I think there's like what we've seen in the last decade and in all the different doctors and specialists that we've talked to is that there's such a gap. There's just such a gap of knowledge and also, I think, compassion and empathy. But the fact that she was turned away from trying to pursue and take control of her donor situation, I ended up referring her to Dr. Daniel to try to go around this local doctor because he was just stuck in this, well, I don't understand. You're a single woman. You can't have a child. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy.
That's insane.
This was 2 years ago. This was so recent. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's why you talking, why Fertility Alberta speaking, why as a professor with the University of Alberta, me going out and speaking to medical students, residents, fellows, family doctors, obstetrics and gynecology specialists about this topic is so important. This is the education piece. This is the piece that everybody needs to know about. If you're not getting the answers you need, there's Rocket Doctor, there's walk-in clinics. You can always get a referral to see a specialist. So if you're not getting the answers you want, keep advocating for yourself.
Tony follows up in here. Remember, she's the one that said it ultimately led to the dissolution of her marriage. She says, I wish I had a doctor like Dr. Daniel. Says the doctor I had back in the day was like Dr. Frankenstein. Says came across with no empathy or compassion. Krabby Chris says it took us 5 years to get pregnant with our second, with a loss in the middle. Chris, I'm sorry. Says tough years I will never forget. Our second is 23 now. How great is that? Ms. KD says my aunt went through IVF. It took something like 8 times, and they were finally successful with twins. Not as expensive in Canada as they're in Australia, but they still paid over $4,000 per treatment. You guys went, was it Barbados that you went to? You called it was it the procreation vacation?
Yes, we called it a procreation vacation.
Why, I mean, aside from obviously Barbados is amazing, but why Barbados?
Well, the price, like we worked out, the price with taking the trip and doing the treatment down there was roughly the same as what we were going to pay here. And at the time, the clinic that we were going to, Linda felt like she was being treated like less as a patient and more of just a number to be pushed through.
Yeah, we had done 3 IUI fertility treatments prior to trying IVF in Barbados, and 3 of those treatments, I was probably in that clinic over a dozen times. And, even on the 12th time, the person would still say, oh, is this your first time in? It felt like they didn't know who we were. We were like a number to them. You add our Canadian winters, traffic during rush hour. This was before the pandemic, so people weren't working from home as much. So it was like we had to say we had a doctor's appointment, but then, but we can't say we have a doctor's appointment again 2 days later. It felt like we had to lie. I'm sick today. It's to kind of make excuses because we hadn't been open about it yet. And then once we started talking about it, people were saying, oh, well, have you tried, have you considered Mexico? Or our friend went to Turkey, you could do a trip out of it. And so the idea of, if we were doing IVF and we're going to have to get jabbed with, fertility drugs in the stomach anyways, it just felt nice that we could then, walk across the street and lay on the beach after versus fighting through winter traffic.
Well, and also you probably just need your body to be in the right place, right, Linda? You need to, all of this takes a toll, I have to imagine.
Yeah, huge mental health toll.
And physical.
Huge mental and physical toll. And so I think, and you do hear that, on our 10-year journey, we did try, there were a lot of natural things as well. So we tried sort of Western science, that wasn't working for us. So we're like, okay, we're going to be open to more natural paths. And one of them was, have you really thought about how stressed out you are? And is that a factor in your ability to conceive? So the vacation aspects, I mean, we didn't end up getting pregnant through that IVF treatment in Barbados, but we had such a great time there.
And the doctors there were great.
The doctors were wonderful.
Yeah.
And
what ultimately worked?
We don't know still.
Honestly?
We still don't know. So our whole journey was unexplained.
I
right?
love that.
Even to the, we were actually scheduled to go back to Barbados because we had 2 embryos frozen frozen. And so we were going to go back. We had it all booked and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then one month I didn't get my period for a week. And this was, something we had been trying to not get for 10 years. And I was like, I don't know what's going on.
Did you allow yourself to get a little excited right away?
I didn't. I waited a full week this time. And that's one of the hardest things when you're trying to have a baby.
Oh, yeah.
The waiting is the hardest part.
And it was nice because she didn't tell me. So
until a week
until that day, and she's like, you should go pick up.
No, I said I think I still wanted to wait a little while longer.
And I was like, okay, yeah, we're not wasting any more money on pregnancy tests because spent hundreds of dollars on them over the years.
Yeah, but it showed up as positive.
I made her use the non-digital one first.
Well, yeah, because that's cheaper.
Yeah, that's right. Ms. Katie, now we're getting comments on vacation sex as the best. Everybody agrees. How about this though from Scarlett? This is wild. Scarlett says when I wanted to get my tubes tied, I was 23 with 2 kids, and the doctor refused and said, "What if your kids die?" She says it was 20 years ago, but the medical system is deeply misogynistic. I think it was Miss Katie here earlier who made a comment, said that they went into a doctor that refused to discuss or refer to an abortion. This is probably something we've talked about this in multiple contexts. There's sort of 2 professions in particular, and I'm sure I'll exclude others, but the judiciary and the medical system, oftentimes slow to enlighten themselves, a little slow to catch up. We've seen high-profile examples of judges saying things from the bench and doctors saying things in examining rooms. Neither of them easy jobs, but this sure factors in this context, I bet.
Yeah, and I can't say sorry enough for maybe the experiences that people have had with other physicians. I think that the narrative is shifting in medicine. In the last many years, there have been more women in medicine. Perhaps that will change the narrative and the way that people are treated.
Yeah.
But certainly as a fertility specialist, this is such a hard topic, right? And you need to find somebody that fits with you and your goals, and whether that's for contraception or whether that's for conception. You need to find a doctor that listens to you and that's going to take you in the path that you want to go down.
Yeah. It's funny. Sometimes I'm adverse to sort of saying something that may throw the conversation a little bit, but there's a comment in here that I think deserves to be discussed. And somebody, I don't know why am I setting it up like this? I'm making this a really big deal.
Yeah.
What I'm about to say probably won't be controversial at all, but somebody in our live chat says both fertility treatments and abortion should be fully funded and fully accessible. And you kind of look at those 2 stacked up next to each other and you go, that almost sounds counterintuitive to stack the 2 up together, but both of them are healthcare, right?
They are.
We need to be able to have that conversation.
Yeah, I think the situation is so different when you're looking to end a pregnancy than when you're looking to start a pregnancy, but both of them are medical issues and both of them require the services of a physician. Both of them are within our healthcare system. In fact, when you look at fertility, some of it is paid by the government. So if you come to a fertility specialist at Alberta Reproductive Centre for a consultation, it's paid for. If you go for investigations or surgery, that's all paid for. Where it shifts in getting pregnant is the treatments, and that's not covered. That's completely out of pocket. And I think so relevant what Linda and Mike said. As Albertans, because there is no coverage in this province, you are going to choose where you spend your money. And as a Canadian, you may not choose to spend your money here in Canada or in Alberta. And so I think it's so important that the government steps up in our province and says, this is important. We're here to support families. We're here to provide universal health care. We're here to see people and understand where they're coming from, whether that's to have an abortion, which is covered, or to build their families. Yes, both are medical conditions when you talk about it that way.
So it is Canadian Fertility Awareness Week, and this year's theme, Fertility Unfiltered, shining a light on fertility, unfiltered, unspoken, unstoppable. Michelle, give us a sense. This is a very politically engaged audience. Can you take us into the advocacy and give us a sense of how responsive or not the Alberta government has been, in particular, as the only province that's not funding this right now? Give us a sense of the provincial politics of all of this.
Yeah, you know what? I have to say that we have not had a single meeting with the Alberta government that wasn't positive. I think along the lines of everything that's been said in this conversation, the more we talk, the more that fertility is out in the open, that people are talking about it, the awareness is there. That filters through all of us, including those in government. We've not had a meeting with an MLA or cabinet minister who either hasn't gone through it themselves, or it's their sister or their best friend. Like, everyone now knows someone who's gone through a fertility journey. Yes, we don't have any funding yet in Alberta, but I do fundamentally believe that it's a matter of when, not if. There's a lot of support for this here. We want to be at the table with government as they're making these policy decisions, and they have let us be at the table thus far. So we've had a very positive experience working with the government, and I'm hopeful that we see something this year.
Amazing. As we wrap our roundtables, for tradition, we like to just go around the table and just give each guest an opportunity to leave something for the audience to consider, kind of a closing remark. Something to send us into the weekend with. Mike, I'm putting you on the spot first. We'll go all the way around. What's something you think people should really consider in the context of what we're talking about?
I just think that, because I was in the trades for a long time, and I learned to be very open about it. And lots of the guys I worked with, guys I worked alongside, they would tell me, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, we also." One guy told me, he's like, "I spent $200,000 before I had my before I had my first kid." And he's like, and everyone's really supportive. And so if you want to be open about it, feel free to be open about it, because there's lots of people going through what you're going through.
Yeah. Linda?
I think for me, it's for people who can't relate to this to understand, that people around you are, right? And so being sympathy, you mentioned that, it's kind of a joke. Oh, when are you having a baby? Like, someone did ask Mike that while we were in, our struggles, and he replied, "Well, we've been trying for years, and we have infertility," and they kind of shut up real fast.
Sure.
So just, taking back whatever your maybe perceptions or those stereotypes are, and it's almost like saying, "Hey, are you pregnant?" You don't ask people that if they don't invite it. So don't ask if people are trying, or don't ask when the baby's coming, or just think a bit more and be more thoughtful about the conversations you might be having around children or a traditional family and pathways to parenthood. Yeah,
I've seen it with my own soulmate, and I know that it's like a searing pain when you're trying to get pregnant and somebody asks why you're not pregnant. Yeah. Or like for us, we had little Wyatt, and like when's the little brother coming? When's the little sister coming? You're going, geez, man.
You don't need to ask him.
Yeah, no kidding. By the way, before Doctor, we asked for your close. Someone in the live chat asking what it costs to freeze eggs. Is there like a one price thing you can tell us, or is it a nuanced thing?
It's a bit nuanced. The nuance, I think, is the medications, how much that costs. But I would say in Canada, you're still looking somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000
really?
for a cycle with medication if it's not paid for.
Wow. Okay. Something you want us to walk with into the weekend?
Yeah, I think just for people who are wondering, should we see a physician? Is it time? Do we have infertility? Our website has lots of information, www.albertafertility.ca. You should see a fertility specialist sooner rather than later. The time that you pause might be the time that is so important for you to capitalize on the eggs that you have and the situation you're in. And there are great fertility specialists out there. We want to help. Alberta Reproductive Centre, we look at the mental and the psychological and the physical and the emotional side of things. So it's not as scary as you think maybe to come and see a fertility specialist in 2025 as it might have been years ago.
There you go, albertafertility.ca. We'll link to that in the show notes. Michelle, our friend in Calgary, last word to you.
Well, I hope you'll forgive me. I want to leave two calls to action. The first one being that Fertility Alberta is partnering with Mount Royal University researchers, in particular Dr. Rachel Pettigrew is leading some research on our behalf to better understand the experiences of fertility patients while employed. So the impact of your infertility journey on your work. And so we're just launching that today. It's not yet on our website. We rushed to get it on Instagram in time for this interview. So
Nice.
if you go to Fertility AB on Instagram, you'll be able to find that the survey is live there. We'll have it on the website next week. If you are a patient or have been a patient within the last 5 years, we'd love to get your feedback on that. It will help inform not just ours, but advocacy across this country. There's a dearth of research, Canadian research in this space. And so this will really help advocates across the country talk to governments and to employers to get more financial support for patients across the country. So there's that. But also, we talked a little bit about politics, and our MLAs are elected to represent us. And so they do listen to their constituents. If you take the time to write a letter to the minister or meet with your MLA, tell them about your personal journey, your story. It helps them understand the breadth of the issue and that it impacts their constituents. And there's power in that.
That's such a wonderful point to be made, and I'm so grateful for it. That's Michelle Chidley joining us, the chair of Fertility Alberta Advocacy and Outreach Association. You can check out, we see the survey there on their Instagram right now at Fertility AB. Dr. Ariana Daniel, a reproductive endocrinologist and infertility specialist, owner of Alberta Reproductive Center, and of course the stars of the show, Mike Brown and Linda Hoang. I'm so thrilled for you, along with everybody else. I remember when you posted that you were pregnant on Instagram, and I just felt like a shot of adrenaline on your behalf. I couldn't register my like soon enough, and I realized about 11,000 other people had liked the post.
Smash
I think
that like.
smash that like and subscribe, But that has to have honestly said something to you as well. That you maybe you realized it, maybe you didn't. But it was like so many people in different ways, shapes, and forms were with you too on that journey.
Yeah, and we still hear it today, so every year, at Canadian Fertility Awareness Week, I talk about it throughout the year, but I do try to talk about it during this week in particular, and there's always people that will message us. This week, lots of people have messaged and say they're either going through it now, or they had gone through it, or I had someone say, I remember crying all through your journey when you were sharing about it, and I still, cry now, but happy that you have your miracle baby. So it's really heartwarming, I think, but most importantly, I think it's been really nice knowing that being open about it has helped people who are struggling.
Awesome. Thanks to the two of you for coming and again, Mike, congratulations on your sperm count. That's that really shouldn't be understated. Just for
We'll throw those numbers up.
Put that in the show notes.
We'll put those in the show notes. You can link to it. It's a Google Doc. You can link to it. People can check out fertilityawarenessweek.ca for more. Canadian Fertility Awareness Week 2025 from April 20th through to the 26th. And let us know what you think to talk@ryanjesperson.com. We'll get to more of your comments in the live chat. And I want to thank our panelists for showing up today and having this incredibly important conversation. These conversations happen with the support of Real Talk partners doing amazing work in their own spaces, and that includes the team at North Road Investment Council. For a lot of Canadians, you're getting your investment advice, your financial planning advice, and it's being delivered through a bank or a bank-owned brokerage firm. But the team at North Road Investment Council wants to give successful savers and successful investors a chance to experience wealth management advice on a platform of true independence. Through the support of professionals with CFP and CFA designations, your financial plan is going to be delivered in connection to an hourly fee, not from commissions paid from investment products. This is a big deal. You can learn more about how they work, Marshall Carey and the team, by visiting their website. Make sure you subscribe to their YouTube channel as well. Great resources there at northroadic.com. If you're going to be barbecuing this weekend, 'tis the season, and there's a Friesen Brothers anywhere near you, make sure you go in and say hello to their butchers. They've got a prime rib day coming up as well on Saturday, the 26th of April. If you're not interested in cooking yourself and you'd rather head there in-house and let the team at Friesen Brothers handle it. They're Red Seal chefs. I don't know about you. I'm big on prime rib. You can get the details at friesen.com. A one-day only sale. You want to take it home while supplies last. This prime rib, Alberta beef, expertly hand-cut by Friesen Brothers master butchers from the finest, freshest Alberta beef. The price, $12.99 per pound, valid only on April 26th. That's this coming Saturday if you're listening to the show around the time that we're doing it. $12.99 a pound is wild for prime rib. Are you kidding me? Treat yourself at Friesen Brothers, Alberta grown and Alberta owned. We're so proud of our partnership with UCAN Youth Services. This group just doing amazing work, helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. You can learn more about their values, their partners, their team. Even check out their annual report to get some insight into how they operate and what drives them. They've got their vision statement, their mission statement. All of this comes down to eliminating barriers in front of young people that have a ton of potential, but they just need a door to open. You can check out their relentless outreach work with 12 to 17-year-olds. The Verto Project that's getting young adults 18 to 24 into job opportunities, paid opportunities, and of course their Road to Work program as well, opening up the construction industry at entry-level jobs to young people otherwise having a difficult time lining it up. UCAN Youth Services doing amazing work. You can read more about it at ucan.ca. And a shout out to Complete Care Restoration, their team right now deployed across the provinces, helping folks, in particular the western provinces, get back on their feet after fire, flood, other natural disasters, and then, of course, the usual suspects, sewer pipes and water main breaks and everything else that happens when you least expect it. They restore your property, they rebuild your peace of mind, and they'll work directly with your insurance company so you don't have to. Heaven forbid, if disaster strikes, remember the name Complete Care Restoration. I love the comments here continuing on the live chat, and I just want to say how much I appreciate those of you that just put it out there and share your own personal stories, your own personal perspectives. Adds so much depth to the show. Alicia in the chat says, so many people in asking questions just never satisfied. If you don't have a baby, they're asking, when are you having one? If you do have a baby, they're asking, when's the next baby? If you lose a baby, when are you trying again? Alicia, you're right. Oh my gosh, right? Says, I just wish more folks would lead with compassion. What a great principle, no matter what we're talking about. Lead with compassion. I like that, Alicia. How about this from Steph? Steph says, I had my son at 41. My doctor told me I was going to have a hard time with the pregnancy. I think he was actually encouraging me to terminate the pregnancy. Steph says, a male OBGYN made me feel terrible. Says I was married back then. I appreciate a lot of you sharing very personal stuff here in the chat. Yeah. Geez. Sensitive subject matter, I know, for a lot of people, but I'm glad we had the conversation, and I appreciate having Linda and Mike in to talk about it. Johnny, I wanted to give credit to Dubious, who was quite correct in the chat when I said it doesn't always happen on the round table. Two guests holding hands, supporting each other, and Dubious says, what are you talking about? It happened just yesterday. And Dubious is correct. You remember our iHuman roundtable with those two youth artists that joined us yesterday. What a powerful conversation about the transformative power of art. That's leading up to a May 7th event, Canvas for Hope. You can read more at ihuman.org. I'm proud to be hosting it at the Winspear Center in Edmonton. But I had a chance to go tour the iHuman.
I saw
the iHuman headquarters after they joined us in studio, and I just wanted to let Real Talkers know about my time there. It had been a while since I'd been there. We actually did the math and figured out I hadn't been in the building for 12 years. So to give you some perspective, a lot has changed. But you go into that place, and it's just a hub. I should call up their website so we can show it off. But they honestly, you walk in there and you recognize there's a lot of young people in there, young adults. You can qualify for their programming and supports all the way up until you're 25. And so there really are a lot of different resources there for young people in the context of an arts organization, but offering so much more. They took me into their fashion center, and they've got all the resources you'd need. Like I don't even know how to talk about sewing. I don't even know what the terminology is, but the different types of fabrics and the different types of sewing needles and sewing machines and an expert in there, a staff member who knows what he's talking about and can give kids not only the dream of maybe becoming fashion designers or learning more about that, but also like mending rips in their clothing. A lot of these kids are experiencing homelessness. They took me into their recording studio. I thought of you and how much you would love it. They've got a full recording studio in there. They've got like the drum kit and guitars and all the mixers and everything. And there were some youth in there that were laying a track down and recording it. They have the software. They can upload it to Spotify, upload it to the different music distribution services, and just amazing. There's a painting studio, like a tagging studio with like proper ventilation and everything. You go in this room with super high ceilings, concrete walls, and you can learn to paint graffiti in there and to tag and all that kind of stuff. And then they also have like a career center where you can put a resume together, all kinds of things. Then they show me the kitchen. This had not even occurred to me because I think of art when I think of iHuman. You know, they're providing like basic food supports where these kids would otherwise not have them. In partnership with the Edmonton Food Bank, they're feeding 500 youth a week out of their kitchen. It blew my mind. I had absolutely no idea. So if you did not check out yet our April 24th iHuman Roundtable, you want to meet two remarkable young people, you can check that out, and you can also check out their website, ihuman.org. I hope you'll join us May 7th at Canvas for Hope at the Winspear. It's a lunch hour event, starts at noon. It's free to attend. They just ask that you RSVP on their website. That's ihuman.org. What are you up to tonight? Are you getting excited for home game number one?
I don't think anyone's excited.
How are you feeling? I know everybody says must win, which is kind of, whatever. It's not technically must win, but if they lose this one, they're cooked.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? You got nervous energy?
Oh yeah, I think the whole city anxious tonight. We'll see what happens.
You gonna be spinning tunes? People come join you. You're going to be playing. You're going to be down there. The whole crew will be down there having a big party. Okay, good stuff. And then, of course, Sunday night, Game 4. We'll see what happens. I'm sure hoping we get a 7-gamer out of this one, and I'm hoping the team moves on. But this is a team with its back against the wall.
Well, we were down 3-rip to Florida. We went to Game 7.
You're right.
Like, this is the first round. So,
if
anything can turn it around, it's a home game. I think we went through this yesterday, but I'll add one thing is the goalie situation tonight for Edmonton can be pivotal.
Yeah.
And it's like if I was Knobloch, I and this isn't a joke, I would just flip a coin in my hotel room before, on the way back, and then just think about it on the plane yesterday from LA. I'm serious, because if you pick Skinner tonight and he has an amazing night, like, remember he had that bounce back? I'm not going to refer, because I can't remember back in the playoffs last year. But anyways, you pick Skinner tonight. He comes out in front of a home crowd. He wins. Boom. He's energized for the rest of the playoffs. He comes out and loses tonight. Man, now we're in trouble. He can't win at home. He can't win away. And you got to throw Pickard to the Wolves to win a decisive Game 4. Man. But you pick Pickard tonight, throw him in, and they do the same thing they did to Skinner the last 2 games. Now you've drained him of all his confidence. On the flip side of that, he has a win tonight. Maybe you ride Pickard for the rest of this series, or throw back in Skinner when he's had 2 days of rest, and he gets a win. Now both your goalies are good again. So, and I'm listening to the fucking experts on every sports station in the States, here, radio, podcast. They're all saying the same thing. You should go with Pickard. You should go with Skinner. You should go back and forth, back. I seriously think it's a toss-up. There's no way to have a great informed decision, even if you're the coach of this team, Chris Knobloch. I'm telling you, flip a coin, Knobs, and just go with it tonight, because that's what it has to be. Is your defense has to come out tonight and help the goalie, whoever it is, and your scorers, come on. We got to start scoring here, and we got to score first.
Let's go, boys. Let's go. Kenny K with you in the chat. He says you got to give it to Pickard for sure. Erin is shaking things up. She says, I put up our Oilers flag today. She says, because that is key. Erin, you know what? I'm actually changing a few things in my routine as well. They're 0-2 with my traditions so far, so I'm going to change things up. Let's all do our part here. Ms. KD is going to be pounding the pavement this weekend down in Calgary. Says, I will be on get out the vote duty for Corey Hogan all weekend in Calgary Confederation. Says he is neck and neck with Jeremy Nixon. And I love this from Wobbly Inc., who says, I was just so impressed by iHuman on your April 24th episode. Thanks so much for making us all aware of them. No. Thank you guys, Real Talkers. This kind of came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, a whole bunch of you started kicking in on our super chat with those donations, and we said we'll match them. And at the end of the day, when it was all counted, we wanted to update you and let you know that because of you and your generosity, Real Talkers, we were able to make a donation of $623.40 to iHuman Programming on behalf of the Real Talk audience. So $623.40 that was not going there before, but did because of you guys, and we sure appreciate you. All right, enough of the niceties. let's get a little spicy, if you will, as we wrap up every week. Courtesy of our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, we bring the hottest takes. That's right. This is the Flamethrower presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. These are your emails to talk@ryanjesperson.com. And this one from GK after my conversation yesterday with Karima Saad, who was the recipient, she and her camera operator of the double birds from the Brantford Boomer. GK says, I'm sorry, Jespo, but Karima pulled the rug over your eyes in her story about the Brantford Boomer. I just read Justin Ling's Substack. She was standing right by a group flying those fuck Carney flags. So he was given the fingers to total dipshits, just like a good Canadian should. That from GK. What about this one from Ross Kelly, who says, Ross is submitting a haiku op-ed following our conversation with Jagmeet Singh. Ross's haiku: champagne socialist with believes the luxury, next stop, the dustbin of history. That from Ross. I'm not sure it follows the 575, but we'll take your point, and thanks for the submission. What about this one from Darian, who says, the story about Jagmeet Singh, what? Putting Canada first ahead of the NDP. He sold out Canada because he didn't want the Conservatives in. If there's still a Conservative majority after all this, says Darian, it'll be hilarious. He says, if you're looking for me, I'll be at the Poilievre rally in Calgary. That from Darian. What about this one from Gerald, who says, are we seriously at the point, Canada, where a lifelong banker who's run one of the world's largest multinationals is considered far left because some guy on Twitter named the Pleb says so? Just because Pierre says it so doesn't mean it's true. I'm not sure how much more center you can get than a guy who wants to expand the energy sector. Just ask that it also works on being a little bit more environmentally friendly as well. Gadzooks, that from Gerald. What about this one from Heather? Heather says, I'm listening to your show the other day, and Ryan tells me all of a sudden he's surprised. He says he hasn't seen any fuck Carney flags. Says, I was just out with my kids just the other day, says Cheryl, and I saw these signs that were talking about, if you're liberal, you're brain damaged. If you're a conservative supporter, you're bang on. And I can't even say, here, let's show the sign itself. She was kind enough to send us an email, so I want to go ahead and show it if I can. And she sent this photo here. You know what? It's taking forever to load. Screw it. Here we go. Here it is. This is... Okay, this is the one that Cheryl sent in. Conservative, she says, conservative is your brain. She says NDP is your brain on drugs. And she says liberal, no brain. And she says immediately I thought, Ryan, how can you possibly be surprised? She says, wake up. That from Heather. And how about this one? I haven't seen that side either, Heather. And this one from Jennifer, who says, Jespo, I nearly choked on my latte when you said you hope we hit 70% voter turnout. Ryan, you hope? What is this, a group project in high school where 30% of us just ghost the assignment? This is the federal election, says Jennifer. April 28th isn't just a date. It's democracy's Super Bowl, and like half the country is treating it like a rerun of paint drying. If you've got the time to binge Love is Blind or scream at hockey referees, you've got time to drag your butt to a voting booth. You guys think 70% is impressive? That means millions of eligible voters are like, nah, I'm good. Imagine ignoring your future that hard. Housing crisis, climate collapse, healthcare crumbling like a stale muffin. But sure, let's stay home and complain on Facebook instead. Jennifer says voting's not a chore, it's the bare minimum. So unless you're in a coma or abducted by aliens, there is no excuse. Mark your calendar, cancel your brunch, and go vote. Or don't whine when the country's on fire and the only thing left to toast your marshmallows with is regret. That from Jennifer. To talk@ryanjesperson.com. You can fire up your flamethrower anytime. We love them. And the next time you're visiting a DQ in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, or Baseline Road to pick up a flamethrower signature stack burger, you make sure you let them know that Real Talk sent you. Hey, the next time we talk to you, it's going to be Monday. It's going to be April 28th. And it's going to be Election Day. We're looking forward to the week that comes. In the meantime, make it a great weekend. Keep it between the lines, everybody, and make sure you do your duty. Go vote on Monday. We'll talk to you soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hicks. General Manager Katie Cook-Chivers. Account Coordinator Lawrence Derlego. Human Resources Lena Shepard. Website Design Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.